All right, we got the man, the myth, the legend, Michael Marckx on the phone for our first ever little BWR show as we get ready for the May 5th date. So no better way to start this than locking down MMX himself and really just breaking down BWR, what it is, where it came from, where it's heading, and where it's currently at. So first off, Michael, what's going on? What's the latest?
Well, I think it's great that we're starting with me because then we know that each one thereafter will get better and better. So it's good to set the bar low. And it's a rainy night here where I'm at. How's it up there?
I think the rain just kind of started to slow down a bit, but it's raining and it's raining for like more than 2 days in Southern California, which is weird. It's almost like we're in Belgium, where your area. It's like it's almost like perfect timing, right?
I like it. I wish every year that BWR could be subjected to rain and wind. But it's unlikely to happen this year with the event happening on Cinco de Mayo.
No, it'll just be tacos. Has wait,
Tacos and tequila.
tacos and tequila all day. Did BWR had a rain one edition one year,
Yeah, there
right?
was one year it rained on the expo, and then we actually had to change the course on the fly the night before because the original dirt sectors were in this place called Lusardi, which it's the kind of mud that you can maybe get like 100 yards and then you're done. And that Lusardi section is like 3.5 miles. And I went out and tried to ride it the day before, and it was impossible. So fortunately, I had planned for that and had a separate course laid out, and CHP went with Plan B. And later in the day, we went through Lusardi, and it had dried off, so all was good. That was a really long day. Um, but yeah, rain can wreak havoc on the trails around here.
Yeah, we're not. I don't want to say we, but the dirt, the trail systems out here, they're not built for this type of weather.
And as
Slimy
much
and
as I
snotty.
Yeah, totally. And as much as I'd like to have a rainy BWR, just the epic race of all races, everyone comes back muddy and with their own stories of craziness. But our trail networks can't accommodate, skinny tires in the mud, and we would decimate the trails. So we just can't have that fantasy come true.
Yeah, this isn't Kansas where it's
Yeah,
used to that, and the dirt just
yeah,
soaks it up. It's a little muddy, but it's fine a couple hours later when the sun comes out.
yeah. I remember
Which
that
what?
one year at DK, they had the mud and people had to walk their bikes for long stretches.
Oh yeah,
Um,
well even last year at DK it rained and they had to put it off for like 30 minutes, and it was just like it was bad for an hour, but then, it just turned out to be nice, and the rest of the day I'm like this would not happen back at home.
yeah, I'd like to do it when it's rainy like that. Maybe next year.
Yeah, it's all good for about 3 hours, and you're like, oh, I got 8 more hours. It's gonna
Yeah, yeah,
be great.
yeah.
Okay, let's do a little history recap for everyone, and really kind of like dive into BWR, where it came from, kind of like the thought process behind it all. I want to say you were working at Spy at the time, correct? When the first one started?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so
yeah.
so it started when you were there. When did it start coming around in your mind of like, I have an idea of doing this event?
So it actually goes back a little bit further. Um, when I was living in LA before I got summoned down to San Diego to turn around Spy, I was I got to do this ride called the French Toast Ride that my friend Dave Yeager and his family have been putting on for decades. And the French Toast Ride was 118 miles through Ventura, Santa Barbara, lots of fun climbs, and goes up Balcom Canyon at like mile 100. And it was always this really incredible ride, invite only, the Jaeger family would make French toast for everyone before, and there was this big lead up to it, and everyone did a weigh in before, and it was just this festive, fun, kind of tight thing. And I asked Dave, I said, hey, look, your familial event is awesome, and it's given me this idea to do something similar, and I kind of want to turn it into something that is a brand and it's its own thing. And your French toast ride has given me this idea of doing the Belgian waffle ride, because the name is so silly, right? But it belies the actual challenge and rigors of the day. So he said, "That's great. Go ahead and do it." And he came down and actually did the first one with us and finished in the front group. And um, I think he and Neil actually shared the yellow jersey from that event. So that first event was kind of this selfish thing where I had a UCI pro card to race cyclocross, so I love racing in the dirt, but I'm much better in really long races. So I thought, well, the ideal thing for me, the only way I can win a race is if it's really long and there's lots of dirt, and then no one fast shows up. But what I wanted to do is like do something that was unique, that no one was doing, that played to my strengths, and fortunately I had a lot of friends that like to do that type of riding too. So I invited 136 people to do this event, and essentially what it was a replication of the Jaeger family's French toast ride, albeit on a much larger scale. But I tried to emote the same sort of family experience where you showed up at Spy, you got treated like royalty, you got to eat Belgian waffles and drink coffee and have eggs and eat whatever you wanted before you rolled out. And then the whole ride experience was something that was unique in that you're jamming along with a bunch of guys at 25 miles an hour, and then you're off road on some crazy cobble like dirt road, and then back onto the road and back and forth. And I think that year it was maybe only 118 miles. But that first year sort of set the tone for what was to come. And everyone had such a good time. And my only ask of them, because it was free to all of them, I said, hey, look, if you had a good time, share it on social media and tell people what a great time the Belgian waffle ride is. So then the next year we charged people, and we had, 360 people that showed up for it and paid money to be a part of this experience and to give to the experience. And then that year it got longer and had more dirt. And then the third year it got longer and had more dirt. Same thing for the fourth year and the fifth year and the sixth year. Last year was the seventh year. It actually got a little shorter, but we added more dirt. This year it'll probably end up being a little bit longer and hopefully a little bit more dirt. So it'll be somewhere around 136 to 140 miles. 46 or 48 miles of it'll be in dirt. And that's sort of the evolution of it. Each year I've tried to make it more difficult, more dirty, more challenging. And then each year I've tried to work with the CHP and the county and the different cities. I think we go through 6 municipalities plus private roads and different parks. But I've tried to work with all those entities to make it more race-like. So more intersections that are covered by CHP, more CHP controlling the groups and controlling the traffic, and make it like a proper race. So each year we get closer to having a really tight, controlled course. And at some point, it's going to be, fully closed, fully supported, like a proper road race would be in Belgium. Because ultimately, I created this as a brand to replicate the events that we have in France or Belgium. So I know that was long-winded, but that's kind of the genesis of it.
So that's kind of what I wanted to ask. Was that your original thought, 7+ years ago, was, hey, I want to create this, you know, classic style, road race, off-road dirt that's, similar to what they do in Europe here in California, Southern California. And I want this to be that because, at the
Yeah.
beginning it's just, it's a closed ride. I mean, it's a private ride, it's 100+ people. And then it's like, it gets bigger each year, but like, obviously everyone's seen it, it, like it's just growing every year, with more riders, more prestige, more media, more sponsors. So like, as it's all the same thinking though, like from day one, like you're like, this is what I want. And now you're just like, you're getting closer and closer and closer. It's that, or it's not like, oh, this is going to be a fun ride. Let's do it. And then, oh, actually this could be something.
No, I always intended for it to be its own standalone brand and event, and have always treated and nurtured it as such. So it's like if you were going to start your own brand, whether it's a apparel company or a bike company or a widget company, you have to have a vision that's supported by a mission and core values. And I just treated the BWR like that. That's why it's the BWR, right? It has its own icon. It's actually the Canyon Belgian Waffle Ride, the formal name of it. But the essence of it is that BWR logo with the lion crest, and that's the iconography of it, which stands for, something romantic and interesting. And that's the brand. And the brand stands for something that's unique, that's playful but serious. And that's what's always kept me going with this thing, is like, it's really serious. It's a really difficult race. It's really hard to do, but it's also this playful celebration of cycling and the cycling community that we have in Southern California, and particularly San Diego, where there's all these colorful, fun people that get together to either support the event as volunteers or do the event, and do so with that celebration in mind. That's why the waffle feast before is so integral to the event. Uh, and then the party with the Lost Abbey afterwards, and drinking all the beers that they have available to us, and then the actual trophy is the badass ale from Lost Abbey. So there's all these things that come together, this confluence of seriousness and funness that make it unique, and that's the thing that I nurture each year.
So, looking at it from like obviously it's yours and like you're, heavily invested. So from my perspective on it, I think it's come at such an interesting time within cycling, from the racing world to the sportive world of these events. From day one, you've always kind of wanted, your plan was this to be a race. And
Yeah.
I feel like that was almost a little early for like what other people are kind of doing. It seems like a lot of the Fondo style events are turning into races now, but like yours is kind of day one been like, that's your goal. And maybe just from my perspective, maybe the first few years, it was more of a ride. Obviously people raced it, but like, what are your thoughts on this? Like the first year is kind of like, is your inclusive deal, like invite only, but second year is open to the public. Where have you seen it from year 2 to now we're going into year 8? The change in who shows up, how serious this is. I mean, obviously, you have, legit current racing pros showing up to win this thing. And unless I'm mistaken, like the first couple of years was kind of more of like the retired pro, the Neil Shirley working at, the magazine to come out and do it. And now I know for sure this year you're going to have like some legit world tour guys. And I know teams that have your event on their calendar to race this thing. So now it's kind of evolving into this where, once again, like my just perspective, like the racing calendar is dwindling in the US, unfortunately. Some of these events, like the BWR mainly, are becoming more prestigious to sponsors, to media, to where you're seeing this crossover now for these race guys actually showing up to make it a real race. Like, what's your thoughts on that, on how that's changed over like the 7 years?
Well, each year it's more and more exciting for me because it's taking sometimes steps and then maybe a big leap towards that ultimate vision that I've had. And um, you're right, like the field has just gotten deeper and deeper each year. And this year it's so demonstrably more powerful in terms of the depth of the pros that are racing, like you mentioned, World Tour pros and entire teams coming to dominate or attempt to control the race, European pros coming over, or Americans that are on European pro teams getting permission to come and race our event. It's the week before Tour of California, so there's some um, touring availability for some of those athletes that can come and actually do our event and do the Tour of California. So it's materializing into the event that I've always wanted it to, and that's really exciting. There's the addition of the prize purse this year for both men and women that makes it really exciting too. And I've never had even one of the pros ask me what the actual prize purse is, which is kind of awesome because that means they're not coming to just win the money. They're actually coming to do this event either for fun or for some more professional endeavor. And then the promotion that we're doing for women, buy one and get your girlfriend in free kind of thing, has dramatically increased the amount of female contenders that we have. And that's really exciting too. Just the female energy that's being poured into the event, that it's nothing but positive, of course.
Have you seen like, obviously like the more racers are coming in on board, you've put it out there since day one, you want this to be a race, but do you feel like that can be still like a healthy balance, like having these legit guys come up? Like, I mean, my view on the U.S. cycling racing thing, I believe it should follow the model of like the marathon style, where it's like, everyone's there together doing the same course. You have your pros, but then you have your weekend warriors. And I feel like that's kind of where almost BWR is going, is in that model, but it's not quite there yet for the US. But like, so do you get any like, backlash from anyone of like, oh, this was like a fun thing, but now you have all these guys trying to race it? Cause, we're seeing that with like events like Kansas, for example. Like people are like, oh, it's gravel. Like people are trying to race it now. Like, you know, I haven't seen it, but like just, obviously you see everything, like, it's your event. Like, do you see any like backlash with that at all?
No, because I think from the get-go, we tried to weed out anyone that would find a reason to complain about the event. And the event was always hard. It was always a race from its inception. And I literally created it with certain people around here in mind that, like, there's no way that they could sit in the group and survive. And so that's the kind of course that I would create to sort of weed out those people that, go to Grand Fondos and kind of just sit in. Like there's just no way you can do that with our event. So the intent is to create this really hard race, and that's great for people, right? Like uh let's just say you're a mid-pack person and it's going to take you, I don't know, 9 hours or 10 hours to do BWR, but you're literally racing on the same course at the same time with, all these pros from all over. You're doing the same thing with them at the same time. It's kind of awesome either to compare yourself to their, superhumanness, or just being able to rub shoulders with these pros or get their autographs, or just sitting there towing the line and taking photos with them. These things are kind of the fun part of the growth of the event.
No, I think that so much of the stuff too is not just the actual ride or the race, but it's also the surroundings because, for instance, you know, the casual cyclist that's out there doing it and is going to be doing it with the pros, they're going to get to hang out after together.
Yeah.
And, when, the biggest race in the US Tour of California comes, they like people that go to watch the race, they are not hanging out with the riders after. They're in the bus, the riders
Yeah.
straight in the bus and going to the next stage. So, I mean, I believe that's such a whole nother aspect that people don't really, I don't want to say like talk about or like kind of think about that, like, hey, they're going to be having a beer together at the Lost Abbey after with a legit pro and just going, oh man, like, just having that conversation. I feel like it almost like opens it up too, because everyone that I've seen that comes, it's just like such a you know, casual mood after, to where everyone's just kind of hanging out, whether you won it or you just finished 2 hours later.
Yeah, the part that I always like is there's that after maybe 100 people have finished, you have all the wafer people that have finished earlier and they're, blotto by the time the other guys get in. But once you've had a critical mass of waffle finishers, everyone sort of fills in the beer garden and cheers in the other people that are coming in, and it's as though like you're at this rave where somebody dosed everyone with ecstasy and everyone's got this sort of funny beer buzz going on and everyone's loving on everyone else, and it's that love fest that is so cool that it happens for about 3 hours after the event where um, basically there's this ecstasy fest for most people, and I just don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No, and I mean, it's a good thing. Like, even saying, describing an environment like that is not a bad thing, but you will not see that on the pro cycling tour, someone explaining a race.
No, so that's the, the whole arc of it is waffles, then a really hard day on the bike. Um, and even out on the bike, there's volunteers dressed in costumes and pushing you up double peak. And there's all these different activations that we have planned for this year that are quite awesome. And then there's that finish at the end, that there's that camaraderie and love and ecstasy-like experience that is super unique. And I don't think other events, I don't think Grand Fondos or any event that I can think of or have done has that same sort of the pageantry of it, the arc of 3 days, and then that final post-event fete that everyone is feeling loving and enjoying the sport and the experience that they just had.
So, speaking of, this year, you started kind of alluded a little bit about what you have planned. We're a few months out now. Is there anything you can kind of clue us in on kind of what's in the works or anything new? I mean, it's on Cinco de Mayo. Do you have any cool plans for that? You gonna be throwing tacos at people or shots of tequila at top of Double Peak? What's
um,
going on for this year?
so hmm, there's more aid stations, which is good. You can never have too many. There'll be more activations, so different groups are going to own each aid station, and they're going to sort of be competing with each other to make the best aid station experience. One of the things that I really wanted to do, and somehow I still fantasize about doing it, is changing the hardman category to to reflect something much more colorful and something, again, this is selfish because I would do this category if it was availed to me, and that is this: before the start of the race, everyone that's entered the hardman category would either have to drink a Lost Abbey beer or have a shot of tequila in front of all the other participants and the spectators. And then gun goes off, and then four other locations along the route, those hardman contenders and hard women contenders would uh, have a choice between a beer and a shot out on the course, uh, culminating at the top of Double Peak with the final one. And then hopefully if they're able to descend the trail and then back to Lost Abbey, once you've crossed the finish line, then you go into the hard man circle and drink the final beer. So you're basically having either 5 or 6 beers or tequilas over the course of 140 miles. That to me would be the ultimate event. The only thing that's getting in the way of me and my fantasy are a number of lawyers.
Let's say it sounds like very like I think we should make this happen, but then you kind of get like reality check of like, mm, yeah, that might not be the.
But
I don't want to say
don't you agree?
best because it sounds like a best idea, but
Wouldn't
like
you do that
if
with
he's,
me?
I mean, we can do that this weekend and try it out, and no one
Okay,
needs to
good.
know about it. And
That's good.
we call it a test run, and
I,
we'll see how it works out.
I'm open to a lot of practice.
Okay, so we could do like a
Yeah,
double day. We do Saturday and Sunday.
but that
Sunday
is my
half the mileage.
fantasy. Okay, good.
Well, we got a few months to plan that out. Might do some low
Yeah,
key
and
training
practice our
concepts
beer
on that.
drinking and tequila.
Yeah, we can do
So
that.
I mean, that's what I really wanted to do to add some color, but I don't think that that's going to happen. So what the general rider will experience is more aid stations, more activation, more volunteers, more costumes, more fun, um, and a lot more riders going alongside them. Right? There's just each wave is going to have a lot more people.
No, it's gonna be big. This is for sure.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so before wrapping this up, real quick, let's actually there's a couple things I want to touch on before we wrap this up. But since we're like kind of talking about the current BWR, this is obviously gonna keep going, it's gonna keep getting bigger. And I feel like your vision's kind of starting to come together with where you want it to go and where you want it to be. But what more is there left on the end goal of where you want to see BWR? Is it, yes, a full classic style race? Is it multiples throughout the year? Is it having one in Belgium? Or like, we're 8 years in now.
Yeah,
What's the
that's
next
great.
8 years gonna go?
Um, I've talked to many people in different locations about hosting BWRs. We've even put money down in Arizona to do an event there. We've talked about it in Colorado and Canada and Virginia. Um, and ultimately, each of those locations offers something, but they're always more gravel-like. And as you know, BWR is a spring classic. It's a road race that has dirt sectors. So it takes its cues from Paris-Roubaix, as opposed to like Dirty Kanza. It's not a gravel event. So the continued evolution of this thing really for me is a closed course with full on road on course support for the peloton, um, spectators everywhere, prize purse, fantastic finish, a really really hard course that changes every year, just as BWR. Every year we've had a different course. Um, so something that's dynamic in that regard, that's an actual race that attracts the best in the world. And we bring them here to San Diego to compete on this really unique course. And I think that will capture the imagination of the cycling world globally and bring people to San Diego to do this super unique event that I just don't think I can replicate in Arizona or West Virginia or Canada. Um, so maybe it will just continue on and grow as it is this singular event, as opposed to like, hey, there's 6 different BWRs that you could race with, the final one being the one that we have here, kind of like the Ironman
This thing kind of like the Kona
business
thing.
model, right? Yeah. So
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Kona's the World Championships, and you have all these other events that are essentially feeder events for the World Championships.
That's not a
I
bad
don't.
idea. I like that.
It is, but how do you with the triathlon? It's like, okay, you've got water, you've got land, and
Yeah,
you're
that's
going to
pretty easy to
swim, you're going to
replicate.
ride a bike, and you're going to run. Um, with our event, it's actually not that easy to find places that offer you plenty of road and then choices to add dirt so that there's this combination of, 35% dirt and 65% road. It's just not as easy as you'd think. And the other thing too is I've always wanted BWR to have punchy climbs and not big long ones. And the way the course is gravitated, I had to add in Black Canyon, which is a long climb. And even uh, Highland Valley at 5.5 miles, that's kind of a long climb. It comes early, so people don't really attack there and try and get away. But eventually if you're in the lead group, you gotta stay in that lead group up Black Canyon or you're done.
No, yeah, if you don't make it over the top of that group, especially that, the area after the wind and the cross, you
Yeah,
got to
you're
be
done.
there. Yeah.
And you're on your own. So ideally, I wish I could change the course that's just got these punchy climbs up and down, but nothing really long. I just haven't been able to find that ideal combination yet.
Yeah, you'll find it. Keep plugging away. You'll figure it
I'm
out.
I'm working at it.
Yeah. So, all right, one last thing is kind of what I want to get in a little habit of asking everyone on this little chat we're doing is, what's your 3 tips for anyone? Because BWR is so, it's whether like the bike, the skill level, the distance, the food. Like, what do you think you the 3 best tips that you can give to someone prior to BWR?
There's probably more than three. Let's
Well,
start
there's probably
with,
300, but
well, there's a few that are maybe tied, like just time in the saddle, or like so that you're used to having your butt on that little thing they call a saddle for 8 or 10 hours. Um, Equally as important is time in the saddle in the dirt and really being comfortable with navigating rocky terrain with skinny tires and knowing how to draw the right line, how to stay seated on climbs that are steep in the dirt so that you don't lose your traction, um, learning how to have a slower cadence and powering through dirt sections more efficiently. So basically the tip is go out and get really comfortable in the dirt, and by doing so, that helps you with the next challenge or the next piece of advice, which is really picking the right equipment, or what weapon are you going to use on race day. And that weapon really is a function of your comfortableness in the dirt, because then that predicates your tire choice. And then tire choice is basically the wider the tire, the less comfortable you are in the dirt. And the tax that comes from that is great. You flow through the dirt because you've got these wide tires, but you've still got, let's just call it 88 miles of road to do, that you have to then drag that rubber around up and down Highland Valley and all the other places. So you have to find that sweet spot of amount of rubber, whatever IRC tire you're going to choose to use on that day, is a function of your comfortableness in the dirt. So time in the saddle, comfort in the dirt, and then with any ultra endurance event, it's an eating contest as well. You need to stay hydrated and eat, and you need to do that on a very regular basis so that when you're coming back through the sandy bandy into the headwinds of the last 40 or 50 miles of the event, you don't want to fall apart because you didn't eat or drink. So practicing eating and drinking and being edified on the bike for those final stretches are the things that are going to get you through it most comfortably.
I'd say those are pretty 3 solid ones, tried and tested, and I could probably have a story for each one of those on why you should do all those. But well, hey Michael, I'm stoked that we got this chat for this first little BWR show conversation we're going to have, and I'm sure we're going to be bugging you again before this happens because we got a few months to get everyone prepped and ready, and maybe a little scared about what's coming up, but more or less just excited about the event. 8 years in, it's amazing to see what it's become.
Well, I'm stoked to rap with you about it, and stoked for your contribution and your interest very much. And I would say people should know that an event like this cannot happen without a lot of people behind the scenes working really hard to give the gift of this experience. And there's, probably 300 volunteers that give their time, but there are, Jacqueline and Phil and Jay and Victor and Chris and Rod, and I could go down the list of all these people that give their time to make it happen, you included. It's a whole host of people that make the BWR really special, and without them, it couldn't happen. I'm eternally grateful for all of their contributions and their desire to make it special for everyone else too. And I just hope that when people do come to do the BWR, they realize what an incredibly difficult endeavor it is just to put it on, with the amount of pain and suffering the county makes us go through. To the it's the worst part of my life is dealing with the county. There's nothing to really say. It's just like dealing with them is like just being in this pain locker that's, you're banging on it to let me out. And they don't let you out until essentially the night before, when they say, okay, here's your permit. We signed it, So
And
anyway,
you get 2 days off and you do it all over again.
Yeah. But this thing couldn't happen without so many great people making it happen. And I hope people appreciate that there's a lot of people working hard on it.
Yeah, no, that is a good point. People need to realize that if, maybe something doesn't go their way that day, that, hey, cool your jets. It's all for fun, and there's a lot of work that goes into this. So,
cool. Well, thanks.
Yeah, we'll definitely be chatting again soon, and I'll let you get back to the night, and I'm gonna get my rest because we have, it sounds like, a weekend of riding bikes, drinking tequila, and drinking some beers, and see if we can pull that off.
Oh, I love it. Let's go train.
Yeah. Yeah, that's real training, right? All right, Michael. Well,
okay, cool.
You have a good evening. We'll chat soon.
Thanks, Horny. Later.
Yeah, that's real training, right? All right, Michael. Well, you have a good evening. We'll chat soon.